everybody that was offsides because of this and sold into this sell-off here is like, oh, I got to get out, the market's crashing. They're not going to have to get back in. That's going to provide that negative sentiment, that negative bias, provides the fuel for the buying to come here and start pushing asset prices higher again. So here's what you need to know before the bell this morning. It is the month of March. March tends to be a seasonally stronger month of the year. So again, we have the seasonally strong periods of the year, which is November, December, January, February, March, April, May, right? Those are the 6 months that are the seasonally strong period of the year. Now, March tends to be one of the stronger months, March and April. Those tend to rise on average about 1% or a little bit more on average during the seasonally strong period of the year. So we just got out of the seasonally weak period of the year. Now remember, we were talking about at the beginning of February, when we did this little bit in February, we said, hey, be careful with February. February tends to be strong in the first half, weak in the last half. And right, and that's of course in the last half of February, it was not a very pleasant experience. Markets sold off pretty well going into the last half of February. Now we had a nice little rally on Friday as pension funds, they do their rebalancing in February. So we saw a good bit of buying right at the end of the market on Friday. Strong advance. Market was up about 1.5% on Friday. But nice recovery rally off support on Friday. Now, that leads us into the beginning of this month. We have some benefactors right now for that, which is that we have extremely negative investor sentiment because of this 4.5% decline from peak to trough that we had. Investor sentiment was extremely negative. Professional investor sentiment got pretty negative. Also, they got their positioning off sides a little bit too much to the bearish side of the camp. But retail investors had some of the highest level of bearishness that we've seen really at any point over the last couple of years, going all the way back to 2020 in the middle of the pandemic. They weren't as bearish, they were about as bearish then as they are now. So again, just a very small decline, but retail investors got extremely bearish during this decline. Markets were oversold enough here to get a bounce, and now we kind of get into the month of March where we wrap up the quarter. We got quarter end rebalancing coming up for portfolios. So a lot of offside positioning right now, a lot of negative sentiment. That's a really good setup here for a bit of a short-term rally. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to go racing off to new highs, but it does kind of provide a nice setup here for a counter trend rally. Again, that real negative sentiment provides the fuel because now everybody that was offsides because of this and sold into this sell-off here is like, oh, I got to get out, the market's crashing. They're not going to have to get back in. That's going to provide that negative sentiment, that negative bias, provides the fuel for the buying to come here and start pushing asset prices higher again. So again, you've got professionals offsides, you've got retail offsides. That provides a nice little setup here. And again, that all kind of coincides with the month of March anyway, which tends to be a little bit seasonally stronger. And then we get into tax season, of course, in April. People get a refund. They put that into the market, so April tends to be good. But now we're starting to approach the end of the seasonally strong period. Once we start getting into June, we'll have to start kind of thinking about what happens next, because typically during the summer months, you'll remember last year, July, August, we had about that 8.5% decline. It was the whole yen carry trade blow up. That tends to happen for some reason in summer months. They tend to be weaker. But again, for right now at least, be a little careful being too bearish here. Markets are likely going to give a bit of a rally just because we're oversold here. We've got some good negative sentiment to provide that rally. So trade that accordingly, and then we'll just help you navigate it from here. But that's what you need to know before the bell this morning.